I have to be honest, micro brands are sometimes a little bit tiring to me. There are a million of them, and a lot of them feel like they follow the derivative formula of let's find a famous design to be inspired by, and then let's make our own version of this famous design with a Chinese, Japanese, or Selita movement inside. So when people in my comments write about different brands, say, what do you think of them? I haven't paid attention to all of them because they just kind of fall in that category. They need to do something different to make me pay attention. And that applied to Venecianico as well. But there are things that get me to pay attention. And one of those is brands that are willing to try and make their own movement, either in-house or in collaboration with someone. To me, it's a sign that the brand at least has a dream of being more than a parts assembler. Venecianico did that, so I started to pay attention. Now I have one of their watches in for review, not with an in-house movement. It's their entry-level integrated bracelet, the Arsenale. Let's dive in. Specifications, 800 euros or about $1,000. The watch is 40 millimeters in diameter, lug to lug is 44 millimeters. Thickness is an impressive 8.95 millimeters, and inside is a Miyota 9029 automatic movement. 42 hours of power reserve, -10 to +30 seconds of accuracy, 50 meters of water resistance. Those were the specs. That makes for something on paper that should be highly wearable and reasonably capable compared to other products at a similar price. If you know anything about watches, you're definitely going to get an initial Parmigiani Tonda vibe from the design, because what you're presented with is an integrated bracelet with that same aggressive integration that almost envelops the entire central head. The bracelet doesn't integrate at the case as much as it integrates all the way to the crown. There's this slightly knurled bezel, which isn't as pronounced on the Parmigiani, but the similarities are there. They also have this choice of having a bracelet with a polished beveled edge, which is also reminiscent of the Parmigiani. The dials also tend to, including on this one, have a minimalist approach. There's no seconds hands, there's a very simple dial, that kind of thing. But this is where the similarities stop. On the wrist, and yes, I've worn several Tondas, the Tonda comes across as a much more substantial watch with much more wrist presence. That's neither better nor worse, it's just different. The Arsenale is just a little bit more understated. It's down to the thinness, it's down to the fact that the beveled edge is a thin one compared to the broader polish on the outer links of the Parmigiani. The shiny parts of the Arsenale are just a little bit less pronounced. The case and bracelet also flow continuously on the Arsenale, where the Tondas have this inverted horns kind of thing as their signature flourish. They might look similar, but they are very different watches. And the key point is I don't feel we're in replica, homage, or plagiarism territory. The Arsenale looks like its own watch that just happens to have similarities with a more expensive watch. The bracelet, really solid. I always listen to how a bracelet sounds. Rolex have this sound that almost no other brands achieve, which just communicates solidity. Seiko don't always have that in the same way. This bracelet feels solid. It feels well made. There's not a lot of jingle or jangle or play or, whatever to it. Polish, edge retention is also really well done. Where the case and the bracelet integrate, it's also close to seamless. The dial has this Côte de Genève style striping, which isn't common at all on dials. I think it's a nice departure from the Sunray dials in different versions of stamped royal oak tapisserie adjacent dials. Now, I'm going to get into the whole Venice connection thing in a moment, but specifically this dial does give me Doge Palace window drapes vibes in a good way. It comes across as old school and classy, but like I said, not Chesterfield, but more Doge Palace, which is it's nice. As for wearing experience, I've been trying to find ways of saying it wears well for 3 years, and the best way to say it is it wears well. Do you know what also wears well? Having subscribed to this channel. You just look cooler. Telling people I'm not subscribed to this watch, that watch, could potentially get you publicly shamed. So do yourself a favor. Be a part of the cool crowd that listens to a bald middle-aged man that talks about watches. Click the subscribe button. Thank you. A few months back, I had the main Manhattan Ultra Slim on review. This watch is positioned in a lot of the same ways. Price-wise, thinness, dressiness, so on. But this watch comes across as having much more pizzazz. It comes down to the case finishing choices. It comes down to the bezel, the knurling, and of course, the much more adventurous dial and the other dials as well. Combining all those things leads to a watch with a lot more personality than a main Manhattan Ultra Thin, and also more than a Christopher Ward C60, which is a much more reserved and plain watch in appeal. The thinness, real benefit. Many integrated watches are around 11 to 13 millimeters. Going to sub 9 makes a world of difference. This watch is almost dressy in its appeal. And I do understand why, despite the world objectively not needing more integrated bracelet options, that so many people like them. This is a watch that can do sports watch and dress watch fairly easily. There are some things that aren't negatives or positives, but things that I think some people will find issue with. It's got no seconds hand. It turns out some people have really strong feelings about the lack of seconds hand. It's also got no date movement. Again, it's not a deal breaker for me, but for some people it is. Another thing that's neither a positive nor a negative is down to the nature of me being deep into this YouTube world. I can tell where certain parts are from, or at least where they are being reused in other components. It's not obfuscation on Venezianico's part. I just know when I see certain kinds of closing mechanisms on a clasp that it comes from the same place as some other brand which has the same mechanism. Some days I can almost convince myself that I can look at 2 dials on 2 different watches and see whether or not they come from the same machine which had the same broken bit on it. Now, again, Venecianico aren't fully integrated. They source like pretty much everybody else. There's nothing wrong with that. You just tend to notice, like the fact that if you sit in an Audi and then you sit in a Volkswagen and then you sit in a Skoda, you're going to see the same indicator stalk and the same core infotainment software. As for actual dislikes, it's a tough one because I'm torn. I generally feel that micro adjust solutions on integrated deployment clasps are ugly. They introduce a gap that ruins the whole point. But your temperatures vary and wrists swell and shrink, and this watch has no easy adjust. And if push comes to shove, I think I'm taking the gap, and I can't get the gap on this one. Another thing, the movement inside is a Miyota that to my knowledge is discontinued. That doesn't mean anything really. It's still serviceable and it will be for a long time, but I just would have preferred to know it was a movement that is still widely produced. Accuracy is not great at -10 to +30 seconds. You're not getting COSC accuracy at this price point. And, for comparison, the Chinese Hangzhou movement that Baltic uses in their 5, 6, 7, 800 euro watches performs at -20 to +20 seconds, which is basically the same. It's just a lot when you're used to -4 to +6. I also don't like the engraving on the back. Again, a personal preference. Who's it for? Well, we're going to have to talk a little bit about that branding. And we have to talk about Americans and Asians. I've spoken to so many watch brands about this, but Americans can't get enough of the term Swiss made. If you throw in a windmill, a dike, and a women in clogs, and you call your chocolate Belgium, Americans are going to buy it. I've got a decent network of Asian friends and associates, and they all confirm you guys can't get enough of old world European storytelling either. Lace and silk and marble and 900-year-old churches is something that gets you going. That's why you come here. But as a Northern European, this kind of storytelling does nothing for me. I think we, as Europeans, kind of just accept that we live in cities with cobbled streets and thatched roofs and churches built 900 years ago. So I really think Venecianico, with their positioning, have an edge. They have something that works outside of our old world. This watch is for a more style-conscious buyer. It's not quite Pitti Uomo style, but it has elements of that. Together with the Italian history, the style, and the artist's angle, I think it will potentially appeal to a person that isn't a completely middle-of-the-road generic watch customer. There's that little twist that sets them apart. So where do I see them right now? The branding approach they've taken seems to be working for them, despite it not really working on me. But branding won't get you far alone. Once you're Rolex, then a brand can carry you. But it can't carry you at this size. At this size, it's down to the quality and sort of popularity of the product. And what do I see there? I honestly see 2 Venecianicos. There's Venecianico that make the Nerido and the Neride and the Bucintoro, relatively generic divers and chronographs. They've thrown some special dial configurations into the mix, but the watches themselves don't set themselves apart from the millions of others selling some sort of diver or chrono. It's just a little bit generic. But then there's the Arsenale and the Redentore lines. These lines come across as much more cohesive lines with a much stronger design language that also sets itself apart from the competition. A watch like the Enigma, although the Venecianico logo is a little bit prominent for my taste, has potential. The ultra black Redentore is really simple and it's really well executed. there are nuggets there that they can build on. The Arsenale is, in my opinion, their strongest watch by a fair amount right now. If they want to go further, the rest of the line needs to take a step up. If they can take some of that Arsenale magic and feed it into their other lines, then they've got some decent potential. Those were my thoughts. Share your thoughts in the comments. And as always with watches and brands like these, if you have experiences with the brand, positive, negative, share them in the comments so others can learn from them before they potentially buy this brand. Like, subscribe. Cheers.